Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to go through 5 horror movies that I should love but just don't. So let me know what you think about these, let me know if you agree with anything that I say. I think some of these might be a bit controversial, but let's get straight to it. So first movie on this list of horror films that I should love but just don't is Phantasm from 1979. I have spoke about this one before, and it's just a film that just doesn't work for me, no matter how many times I try it over the years. Somewhat of a garbled mess of a movie in my experience, and one that kind of clumsily flirts between horror and fantasy, but kind of never really hits the mark in either aspect. Even kind of the horror elements to this one sort of feel like more kind of sleight of hand magic tricks rather than kind of palpable horror moments. I mean, the flying orbs that drill into people's heads, there's no denying that they are particularly impressive. But even then, they feel sort of like incidental party tricks with a bit of gore thrown in, rather than actual heavy-hitting, memorable movie deaths. And there are some things about this movie that I like. I think the soundtrack to Phantasm is particularly effective. And I do like the funeral home setting. I think Morningside Cemetery is a very good place to have a horror film. But it's just a film that feels all over the place and doesn't really have any kind of solid, tangible narrative to really get invested behind. Angus Scrimm as the tall man is definitely worth a mention. He does give a good performance and has become somewhat iconic, but I feel his kind of limited dialogue and him just standing there going boy over and over again is not enough to kind of get me all that enthused behind the character, although credit to him for portraying him so well over the course of the whole franchise. So yeah, Phantasm, just not a movie that works for me. I find most of it kind of perplexing rather than entertaining or indeed scary. I doubt it's a film that will ever work for me, unfortunately. Next movie on the list is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 from 1986. One of the most frustratingly bad decisions in horror, in my opinion, to go from the terrifying effectiveness of the original to this more kind of comedic parody version in the sequel. I have absolutely no idea what made Tobe Hooper want to take that, but it's such a grating turnaround and one that does not work for me at all. I don't think the film is as funny as it thinks it is. I don't think it's this sort of laugh-a-minute romp that it wants to be. And I just find it almost kind of insulting to just how good the original was. This one we see the family, who are much more kind of outgoing and cartoonish, terrorising this DJ woman. But they have a Texas Ranger in the form of Dennis Hopper, who's on the trail of them. And that aspect of the story I do kind of like. I think, and I'm not sure how you would ever have followed up a sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre personally, but that notion of some kind of law enforcement hunting them down is pretty intriguing, kind of predating but following the trope of the Devil's Rejects. That might have worked a bit more if they'd have kept the seriousness and the grittiness, but just swapping it like they did was just awful. And it's actually a film that I very, very rarely return to because I just dislike it so much for that jarring change of tone and all the comedic elements. And interestingly, in terms of horror movies that I should like but I don't, this one is a weird one because I liken this movie to The Howling 2, which is a film that pretty much sets its stall out in the same way as Texas Chainsaw 2 in terms of going from a very serious first film to comedic 80s. And yet I love Howling 2, which is a really weird one. So yeah, I love that one, but don't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So that one's a bit of a mystery, but who said that horror fandom had to have any rhyme or reason? But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, for me, one of the worst kind of creative decisions within horror, and not a film that I return to hardly at all, because I dislike it so much. Next up we have The Being from 1983. Probably my biggest love-hate relationship with a horror movie ever. The Being, on paper, should be an absolute gem to me. This is an 80s monster movie. It's a monster that's generated from sort of like toxic waste. It goes around terrorizing a quiet suburban town with Martin Landau as a scientist tracking it down. It sounds amazing, and it's a movie, whenever I look at it, whenever I see the cover, read about that plot, I am totally into this film and think, gosh, this is amazing. And whenever I return to it, I am always bitterly disappointed. My biggest problem with The Being is it seems to have a distinct reluctancy to show the monster. The monster gets virtually zero screen time in this film. It's talked about a lot, it's alluded to. We do get a few scenes of kind of tentacled arms wrapping around the actors and a few very, very quick shots of it, but you virtually just don't see it in the film. In the movie's climax at the end, it takes place in like this warehouse, and we do get a couple of shots of kind of what would be a good look at the creature, but they're virtually like 1 second shots. I mean, I'll show it here and it looks amazing, but these images that you're seeing, they last, as I say, 1 or 2 seconds in the film, and that's it. And it's so frustrating because of the few glimpses that we get of this creature, it looks amazing. It's got these gnarly teeth and this cool one eye, and it's like slimy and it's dripping with blood. It looks absolutely fantastic. I don't know why they didn't get it out there on screen. But it's a film that just frustratingly withholds its creature from us through pretty much the whole movie. On top of that, the performances in the Being are pretty terrible. I mean, Martin Landau aside, whose character is quite captivating in this as a scientist, everyone else in this is really kind of wooden, and their line delivery is particularly painful. And in a movie that has more dialogue than horror, that's not a good combination. So The Being, yeah, I look at it, it looks amazing, I want to like it so much, but I'm always bitterly disappointed whenever I return to it. It's such a sad example of a monster movie. Next up, we have the beloved, quite frankly, Creepshow from 1982. This is another movie that just does not work for me, no matter how many times I try it throughout the years. I don't particularly enjoy it. I don't think it's the entertaining novelty that it thinks it is. Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. There's a few elements about it that I do like. I like the zombie in the Father's Day segment. I quite enjoy the segment with Leslie Nielsen and the zombies on the beach, but on the whole, none of it kind of resonates with me very much. The Lonesome Case of Geordie Beryl, I find that to be an interesting premise. I like plant-based monsters, but I've never really been a fan of Stephen King's portrayal in that one. I find his comedic, dim-witted approach quite forced, quite frankly, and it's a performance that's grated me over the years. The Crate was okay, but again, I don't like kind of the comic, cartoonish approach, and then a lot of elements from the movie I've kind of forgotten. And I think my main issue with Creepshow is it's the coming together of Stephen King and George Romero, two horror masters, two people that have terrified me over the years, and the thing that they end up going with is a kind of a comedic horror mess around. That was such a missed opportunity. They should have gone serious and made something genuinely scary. I think that would have been an amazing film, rather than a comedic anthology. Yeah, it doesn't work for me at all, unfortunately. I've just never been a fan of Creepshow. I actually don't mind Creepshow 2, and anthologies in general I tend to enjoy, but Creepshow has just never done it for me. And the last movie on the list of movies that I should love but just don't is Tentacles from 1977. Now, if you watch this channel, if you know anything about me, you'll know that for some reason, monsters and creatures that come out of the water, I just go weak at the knees for. I don't know what it is, I just love aquatic-based monsters. So something like Tentacles, a giant killer octopus, like, I am there. You've got my attention. But Tentacles, unfortunately, is just a bad film. It plays out in such a terrible way, and it's just not a fun film to watch, which is such a shame. But even from the opening scene where the octopus creature kills a baby in a pram, It was such a bad way to start that movie, because I can see that they're going for the shocking element and to get your attention, but I don't know, killing a baby like that in the first scene just kind of deflates the whole mood, to be honest, and just, yeah, makes the rest of it a bit of an uphill struggle. And it's also just, after that, it's just incredibly silly. There's a whole lot of talking and just boring nonsense that goes on in this one. We get very little screen time for the killer octopus. It does do one good thing towards the end of the movie, where we get a POV shot of the octopus's head as it glides through the water. I did think that was particularly impressive and quite unique. I don't believe octopuses actually do that in real life, but I've always appreciated that shot in the movie. That is one good thing that it did. But other than that, this is a pretty dull and somewhat cheesy and somewhat cringy film, I have to say. Let's not forget the awful scene of the guy kind of having a heart-to-heart with the two dolphins, where it's kind of like, I really need you to help me here, guys. I need you to help me with this. And there's like this weird soap opera music playing in the background. It's just a strange scene of a pretty bizarre movie. So yeah, Tentacles is a movie that I would be first in line to see that, but this one is particularly bad, unfortunately. So there we go, guys. That is 5 horror movies that I should love but just don't. Let me know what you think about that. It's always kind of a contentious topic, so let me know if you agree with any of these. It'd be nice to know if anyone shares the same sort of feelings towards these. But if not, let me know what movies are out there that you feel you should like, that you don't. I'd be really interested to know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.